You need to watch this if you crave chills down your spine. Welcome to Soul Studios. Here, true crime meets the unknown. Suspense lurks in every shadow, and supernatural forces whisper from the dark. We craft chilling, edge-of-your-seat short stories inspired by the eerie, the unexplained, and the most haunting mysteries. 3 new stories drop every week, each one darker than the last. Are you ready to step inside? Subscribe now before the next story finds you.
In the summer of 2010, 3 friends slipped past chained gates and into the ruins of an abandoned hospital. What they thought would be nothing more than a midnight dare turned into something far more disturbing. Inside those decaying halls, they found more than broken glass and graffiti. There were echoes, strange cries, and a discovery that blurred the line between urban legend and reality. What happened that night left lasting scars, unanswered questions, and a mystery that still lingers. Was it all a prank gone wrong, or did they truly awaken something that was never meant to be disturbed? If you crave cinematic, slow-burn horror drawn from real places and real legends, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Soul Studios and hit the bell, because every week we bring you a new nightmare, and the truth is always stranger than fiction. In the summer of 2010, 2 bloodied teenagers burst out of an abandoned hospital in Washington, D.C., just after midnight. They were hysterical, rambling about a woman in white wailing in the darkness and a lost baby. Authorities initially assumed the teens were simply trespassers who spooked themselves, but when investigators searched the derelict pathology building the next morning, they uncovered a chilling secret, sealed in a rusted container. It was a discovery that would blur the line between urban legend and true crime, leaving even seasoned officers shaken. St. Augustus Hospital, as we'll call it, was once a bustling city hospital, complete with a busy maternity ward and a pathology lab that housed a large morgue. After the city shut it down in 2001 amid budget cuts, the campus sat abandoned. Over the years, folklore began to fester in the silence. Locals whispered that late at night, ghostly lullabies could be heard echoing down the halls. Some claimed to see the figure of a grieving woman in a white hospital gown roaming near the old maternity wing, cradling something invisible in her arms. According to legend, decades ago, a young nurse there lost her newborn under mysterious circumstances and took her own life in despair. Now her restless spirit supposedly searched the ruins for her baby. Most dismissed these stories as just that, stories. But for the city's teenagers, the abandoned hospital became an irresistible dare. On a warm Friday night in July 2010, 3 friends, Marcus, Elena, and Dev, set out to test the legend of St. Augustus. Marcus was the adventurous one, always chasing the next thrill for his YouTube channel. Elena was a budding skeptic who prided herself on debunking ghost stories, while Dev, quietly nervous, tagged along so his friends wouldn't go alone. Armed with only flashlights and a shaky camcorder, they slipped through a gap in the chained front gates around 11 p.m. "This place gives me the creeps," Elena whispered as they approached the hulking silhouette of the hospital. The building's windows were gaping black holes, and graffiti-scrawled walls loomed under the moonlight. Dev noted a faded sign by a side door reading, "Laboratory entrance, funeral directors only," a grim reminder that death had once passed regularly through these halls. Inside, the air was stagnant and thick with the scent of mildew. Peeling posters and scattered medical files littered the corridor. Marcus led the way, bravado in his step, joking, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the haunted hospital." Elena rolled her eyes but stayed close. Dev's knuckles were white around his flashlight. Unbeknownst to Elena and Dev, Marcus had something extra planned. He'd prepared a few tricks to spark a scare, hoping to capture genuine reactions for his channel. The trio navigated through debris-strewn hallways, sweeping their flashlights over defunct gurneys and shattered glass. Every sound, the drip of water from a leaky pipe, the crunch of paint chips underfoot, made them jumpy. Somewhere above, a door slammed faintly. They froze. "Probably just the wind," Marcus whispered with a smirk, though there was no breeze in the stifling building. In truth, he'd wedged that door open earlier, expecting it to eventually fall shut. The timing was perfect. He saw Elena's face tighten. They pressed on, deeper into the labyrinth. As they passed what had been the maternity ward, Dev noticed something on the wall. Tiny handprints in faded red trailing toward the pathology lab. "Do you guys see this?" he muttered. Elena shivered. The handprints were likely graffiti. She reasoned, but they looked eerily like smeared blood. Marcus kept silent. He hadn't staged that. Perhaps just an old prank by other kids. He pushed the door to the pathology wing, which groaned on its hinges. Inside the pathology lab, their flashlights danced over stainless steel autopsy tables and dark stains on the floor. Elena's light fixed on a metal container sitting on a counter, coated in dust. A label on it read, "Biohazard." "Let's not touch anything," she warned. None of them did, for now. The trio moved through a warren of small offices and exam rooms. Dev's camera jittered in the darkness as he filmed over Marcus's shoulder. Somewhere in the bowels of the building, a soft thump echoed. Elena's breath hitched. They entered a larger room, the autopsy suite. Rows of empty storage drawers for corpses lined one wall. Marcus couldn't resist. With a grin, he tugged one open. It screeched loudly as it slid out, empty save for a stale odor. Elena shot him a furious look. "Not funny, Mark," Dev whispered. "Guys, listen." They fell silent. Faintly down the corridor came a new sound, a muffled cry, high-pitched and plaintive. It almost sounded like a baby. Elena's eyes widened. "No way that's real," she said, voice unsteady. Dev's heart pounded. The sound tugged at some primal fear. Marcus felt a surge of adrenaline. This was exactly the kind of moment he wanted. Unknown to his friends, he had hidden a small wireless speaker by an air vent earlier, loaded with an audio track of an infant's cry. He'd planned to use it later, but apparently the Bluetooth timer he set had triggered early. Playing along, he whispered, "Hello? Is someone there?" The crying faded into an eerie silence. The friends exchanged uneasy glances. Folklore or not, hearing a phantom baby's cry in an abandoned morgue would rattle anyone. They followed the corridor toward where the sound had emanated. Marcus led, feigning courage, though now his own nerves were starting to fray. He knew he had caused the baby sound, but it had felt too real in these dead halls. As they turned a corner, Elena suddenly hissed, "Do you smell that?" A whiff of something rotten, like spoiled meat, hung in the air. Dev gagged slightly. The beam of his flashlight fell upon a dark, wet trail on the tile floor leading around the next corner. It looked like smeared fluids, possibly blood. At the end of the trail was room 104, the door slightly ajar. Marcus, swallowing hard, gently pushed it open. Their lights revealed a small examination room. In the center, on a cracked linoleum floor, lay an open white container, just like the one Elena had noticed earlier. But this one was open, and it wasn't empty. Wrappings of moist, brown-stained paper peeked out. A pungent iron-like smell hit them. Marcus approached, aiming his flashlight in. He recoiled, shouting, "Oh my God!" Elena stepped forward and saw it too, the vague shape of something tiny humanoid inside the paper. Fingernails, hair. She realized with horror that it looked like a preserved infant's remains. Elena screamed, stumbling back against the wall. Dev's camera clattered to the floor as he covered his mouth in shock. Marcus was shaking, trying to form words. It's a baby," he stammered, his bravado utterly gone. None of them noticed that behind them, the door to room 104 was silently swinging shut. The heavy slam jolted them. The lights flickered. Marcus lunged for the door, yanking the handle. It was stuck, as if held by an unseen force. He threw his shoulder against it. On the third hit, it flew open, sending Marcus sprawling into the hallway. In the confusion, Dev scooped up the camera and bolted out after him, with Elena on their heels. All three ran, abandoning the container and its grisly contents. In her panic, Elena thought she glimpsed a figure at the far end of the corridor, a woman in a white gown, half shrouded in shadow, watching them. She would later insist the figure had no eyes, just dark hollows. Marcus, Elena, and Dev sprinted through the warren of corridors, desperate for an exit. The building seemed like an endless maze now. Their flashlights jittered wildly. From behind, that keening cry of an infant started up again, louder and more anguished than before, as if enraged at their intrusion. Dev shouted, "This way!" spotting the faint moonlight of an open doorway ahead. The three piled through a back exit into the overgrown courtyard behind the hospital, not stopping until they reached the fence line. They scrambled over, falling hard on the sidewalk outside. Only then did they dare glance back at the building. For a moment, in a third-floor window, Elena and Dev both saw it. A pale face watching from the darkness, framed by a white cap or veil like an old nurse's uniform. Marcus didn't look back. He was hunched over on the ground, sobbing for air. The friends had escaped the hospital, all except for one thing. Marcus was no longer holding his camera. In the chaos, he must have dropped it inside, and in that moment, none of them had the courage to go back for it. Blue and red lights flashed across the cracked facade of St. Augustus within half an hour. A neighbour, hearing Elena's scream and seeing the teens tumble out, had called 911. By the time police and paramedics arrived, Dev and Elena were huddled together on the curb, trembling and sobbing. Marcus was pacing wild-eyed, insisting, "She killed it. She killed the baby, and now she's after us." No one understood what he meant. As EMTs tried to examine them, Marcus broke away, shouting that he had to go back for the camera, that it held proof. Before anyone could stop him, Marcus sprinted back toward the hospital and vanished into the door they'd escaped from. Elena screamed after him, but her voice was lost in the wail of sirens. Two officers rushed in after Marcus, but found nothing. The corridors were empty and silent. Marcus had simply disappeared. It made no sense. He'd entered just moments before them. The only traces were drops of blood on the floor from where he'd scraped his arm climbing the fence. The officers felt an unnerving hush in that place, and both would later admit they felt watched as they searched. They radioed for backup to secure the building. By dawn, the police had combed through St. Augustus Hospital. In room 104, they encountered a scene out of a nightmare. A container with what looked like human remains of an infant, carefully wrapped in old autopsy papers. It was a gruesome discovery, but oddly it appeared historical, likely left behind when the hospital closed years ago. The medical examiner later confirmed the remains were decades old, a forgotten stillborn or fetus that had been preserved and abandoned. No sign of Marcus was found that night, but the officers did report that the door to room 104 was ajar when they found it, despite Elena and Dev swearing it slammed shut on them. The official search continued for days. Investigators retrieved Dev's fallen camcorder near the pathology lab's entrance. The footage was largely shaky and dark, but one segment made the hairs of every detective stand on end. As the trio was fleeing down the hall, the camera dangling from Dev's hand briefly caught a figure in the distance. The video, though blurry, showed what appeared to be a woman in a white uniform standing at the end of the hall, head tilted as if cradling something. She did not appear to have any eyes, just two dark voids. The figure flickered and vanished when the lights flashed. None of the officers could explain it. Some chalked it up to artifact or reflection, others refused to watch it again. 5 days after that harrowing night, Marcus was found. He emerged at dawn in a daze on the hospital's front steps, dehydrated with a fractured arm and no memory of what happened after he ran back in. He kept muttering about setting it right. Paramedics rushed him to a modern hospital. When he finally recovered enough to speak clearly, Marcus confessed something shocking. The ghostly cries and some of the scares had been his doing. He tearfully admitted to detectives and his furious friends that he planted a speaker to play the baby's cry and staged a few noises to hype the adventure. He'd even draped a bedsheet on a coat rack at the end of a hall earlier in the day, hoping to create a fake apparition on camera. Those were the pranks he'd planned. But, he insisted, something went horribly wrong. According to Marcus, when the container in room 104 was opened and they realized what was inside, he felt a presence ignite in the room. The door slamming wasn't his doing, it was her, he said. Overwhelmed by guilt and terror, Marcus had run back inside that night, not to retrieve the camera, but to beg the spirit's forgiveness and put the remains to rest properly. He claimed he found the woman in white in the autopsy suite. She wasn't a story, she was real, he whispered, eyes vacant. Marcus alleged that the spirit led him to an unmarked infant grave behind the building, and then he remembered nothing else. Police were skeptical of his supernatural tale. They considered the possibility that Marcus, racked with guilt for frightening his friends, might have suffered a breakdown and injured himself in the process. There was talk of charging him with trespassing or even reckless endangerment, but ultimately Marcus's bizarre account and obvious trauma swayed them to let it go. After all, no crime had been committed by the living. The infant's death had happened long ago, and its discovery, while disturbing, was deemed an awful oversight by the old hospital staff. Marcus's camera prank was cruel, but not illegal. Yet Elena and Dev didn't know what to believe. Marcus's pranks explained the initial scares, the crying audio, the slamming door trick, but not the final apparition they saw, or the door that sealed itself. And nothing could explain how Marcus survived 5 days missing with injuries as if he'd fallen from a great height, nor the strange bruise marks on his arms that looked like slender fingers gripping him. These details were never released to the public. Officially, the case was closed with Marcus found safe. Unofficially, everyone who was there that night felt forever changed. Dev and Elena never returned to St. Augustus, and the city soon bolted every known entrance to the campus. Each suffered nightmares of that melancholy wail echoing in the dark. A year later, Elena, still haunted by what she saw, visited the gravesite of the unnamed infant that had finally received a proper burial. She left a pair of baby booties and said a quiet prayer for the mother and child. As she turned to leave, she felt a gentle, cold breeze wrap around her in the still summer air, and for a moment thought she saw a tall woman in white standing among the distant trees. Elena blinked, and the figure was gone. She couldn't be sure if it was just her mind playing tricks. Perhaps the spirit was at peace. Or perhaps a part of it still lingered at the site, bound by love and loss. The story of the abandoned hospital mother became a local legend in its own right after that. Some say Marcus's footage, leaked online, shows the ghost's face for a split second, an image that has fueled countless theories. Many insist it's an elaborate hoax concocted by thrill-seekers. Others, pointing to the very real evidence of the infant's remains and the teen's injuries, believe something truly paranormal occurred in those halls. To this day, drivers on late-night routes near the old hospital claim they sometimes see a lone figure in a white nurse's dress standing at the building's window, looking out as if searching. Whether it's the spirit of a grieving mother, a long-dead nurse, or just the power of suggestion, St. Augustus Hospital keeps its secrets. What is certain is that in 2010, 3 friends went seeking a ghost story and stumbled into something far more horrifying. A collision of youthful mischief and unspeakable tragedy from the past. They learned that some urban legends have deep roots in reality, and sometimes the dead do not rest quietly when disturbed. The next time you hear an odd cry in the dark or see a flash of white in the corner of your eye in an abandoned place, ask yourself, is it just a prank? Or have you perhaps awakened something beyond your understanding? Some say the hospital's ghost found peace when the child's remains were buried. Others believe she still walks the halls, searching for what was taken from her. Either way, if you ever hear a baby crying in a place that's been dead for years, don't go looking for it. Some legends don't fade. They wait.
Every story has an end, but here the mysteries never stop. Thank you for watching and being a part of this journey into the unknown. Your support keeps these stories alive, and there's plenty more waiting for you. We drop 3 new stories every week, so if you crave suspense, the unexplained and the downright chilling, make sure you're subscribed and ready for what's next. Until then, keep your lights on, your doors locked, and remember, some stories stay with you long after they're told.